Welcome, Mr. Chris, to the Road to Net Zero with Khaleej Times. Today we'll speak about Masdar City and how Masdar City was among the first commitments of the United Arab Emirates to establish a carbon-free city, the first carbon zero free city. You joined in 2008. You have been an associate director. You have been a lead architect that you were part of, one of which for who people know is the Siemens building, as well as other buildings, the IRENA building as well. Can you please speak to us about the challenges that you faced in trying to develop this whole idea of carbon free?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think when one talks about city planning and master planning, and in a particular case, Masdar City as a project, city design mean many things to many people because it is such a center and converging of not only got people living in cities but working in cities, but there also are people playing in the cities, people are learning cities, right? So it all have to come together. So it's a very multi-dimensional requirement, and that's what makes city so interesting and complex. We all know that the estimation by 2050, 2/3 of the world global population are going to be living in cities. So Masdar City is about understanding and discovering if there is a more sustainable way of living. In this sustainability dimension, one breaks it down into different types or different pillars of sustainability. One talks about social sustainability, which is the idea of building a social fabric, building community, improving the livability of a place so people can engage, work, be content, learn, and all these great things in life, interaction with humans.
Where does the sustainability fall? So social sustainability.
Social sustainability.
So the word sustainability, sometimes, I feel that we use it out of context, or people fail to understand the sustainability part of, what you're trying to do. So social sustainability. So this, as I understood, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
You're absolutely right. One has to step back a little bit and understand just simply sustainability itself. What does it really mean? It means to sustain. And somehow you need to sustain into the future. It means for the human race, you need to continue forward. You are here today. You're here in the future. You're here in 1,000 years' time. With a bit of luck, we are here for eternity.
Absolutely.
Right? Anything kind of short of that, philosophically, you're not sustainable, right? So to me, that's kind of quite thought-provoking. So sustainability is just about living and moving on. In order for that to happen, right, you can break it down into different components. So as I mentioned just now, the human sustainability or the livability. Or building society, all this type of thing, the living parts, and that's often known as social sustainability. And then there's the whole world of finance and economics. So we talk about economic sustainability because we do live in the economic world, and the economic sustainability means that everything has an economic value to it, and we know we have to balance that for the human race to progress. And then thirdly, probably what sustainability is best known for is environmental sustainability, right? And this is where we as humans try our utmost best to live in harmony with the environment, because we are now learning that if we don't live in harmony environment, if we don't look after the environment, then the environment will not look after us. In its most pressing form today, related to this, is the whole area of climate action and climate change, because greenhouse gas emissions caused by human activity is clearly disrupting the environment. So one talks about climate change, one talks about carbon emissions, one talks about sustainability in its different dimensions. they are not the same thing, but they're all closely interrelated. And when you move one thing, everything else kind of moves with it and it's influenced by it.
How sustainable is sustainability?
Wow. How sustainable is sustainability?
Yes. There is a lot of spectrums to speak
That's
about.
right. That's right.
I know it might come off a little bit philosophical.
Yes.
Nonetheless, what is it that we're sustaining?
Yeah.
Everything comes from the environment.
That's right.
We actually are extracting our raw materials, whether it's for buildings, energy, etc., all from the environment. And at the same time, there is some sort of residue of environmental harm that happens during this extraction process. So it's kind of controversial in an essence where I say, I'm trying to sustain, but yet at the same time, there is some sort of effect that is happening to the environment. And, there is no equilibrium in this equation. So for instance, if we speak about it very broadly, in terms of specifically CO2 emissions or green gas emissions, what would you say if there was a huge, let's say, can we say a forest, or can we say a garden surrounding Masdar City, where it can, attract all of these emissions? How sustainable would that be? How sustainable will water be? I've read a little bit about one of your nice projects about capturing humidity and turning it into water. But is that even sustainable to start with? And to what degree is it sustainable? Masdar City, you guys reached a huge milestone in this field. You started the first model. There is a lot of things that happened down the road. You learned a lot, and there is a lot to teach people, and there was, of course, a lot of challenges. A lot of things happened on that way, which is leading us towards, making sure that Masdar City is one of these models for urbanization in the next 10, 20 years, specifically under that whole banner of the road to net zero. Can you elaborate a little bit more on it, Mr. Chris?
Yes, sure. Ultimately, back to the question, how sustainable is sustainability, right? In its true essence, there's only, in my mind, one sustainability, right? And the test for that is where we are, not so much 10 years, 20 years down the line, but maybe 100 years down the line, or even 1,000 years down the line. Because I think one of the concerns is that if we carry on the way we're doing, maybe we won't be, or maybe a large proportion of us won't be here in 1,000 years' time. That truly cannot be sustainable, right? And so sustainability, from a very harsh point of view, can be looked at as survival.
Okay.
Survival.
Of human race.
Of the human race. On the one hand, if one's being very harsh about the definition of sustainability, which is taught simply as survival of the human race.
Okay.
Okay. But when you talk about survival of the human race, you have not begun to talk about what about health, what about well-being, what about security, what about peace of mind? You could survive, but have the worst conditions of life, but still survive. And so when you bring all these other factors in, and which are all very important factors, health and well-being, and that is on top of many organizations' agenda, right? Then, and you wrap that in, so true sustainability has to take care of just multiple measures, which just beyond just pure kind of philosophical sustainability. And that's why when one talks about sustainability, it's, I do have to deal with health, I do have to do well-being, I do have to do peace of mind, right, and balance, so people can live together as a community and in peace. And an extension of this is that is the environmental side, and as you say, the climate side, because you do have to deal with things, because if you don't deal with climate, then bad things happen, right? And we're seeing that already. It knocks people off center, be it from losing a home to losing lives, and many, many very, very unfortunate things we are witnessing at the moment. So the Masdar City approach is to explore many, many, many different avenues.
Okay.
We are exploring many, many different technologies, right? We know some technologies and some avenues are going to, in fact, many of them are going to lead to dead ends. That's okay. You have to find out how far it goes, because oftentimes when you find out dead end, or what you think is a dead end, it's not a dead end, it will lead you to somewhere else. And that's when Masdar City is a thinking platform, an innovation platform for sustainable living. We do experiment, we do try to keep an open mind to look at these different avenues, and we try our very best not to have preconceptions without actually looking down these areas. Mm-hmm. And I think what you see today in Masdar City, where we just, from an iterative process, just continue to ask ourselves, what is sustainable living? What is sustainable living? And we start modifying our journey through our different buildings, through our different designs, and each one try to sort of improve from lessons learned on the last one. Some buildings, we are concentrating on economic sustainability.
What is economic sustainability?
Well, economic sustainability means, in simple terms, being environmentally sustainable but affordable at the same time. Right? Probably the best example of what's going on now today at Masdar City. As you're coming in, I hope you notice there's a lot of construction going on.
Yes.
So we have 3 major projects under construction, building construction, which are all on target to be net zero energy. Mm-hmm. Right? So what is net zero energy? Net zero energy, as we're working with it, means that the energy used to operate the building for its electricity use and its cooling use, right, is offset by the production of solar energy, in our case, solar panels on the roof of the building. If all the solar panels on the roof of the building is producing more energy over a period of time than the energy that you're using, then you in fact have a net zero energy building. And if you can work a building that fulfills this formula, then you have a very good chance to really minimize your emissions footprint.
Nonetheless, working with, so I tried to work with solar panels myself at a very huge scale.
Yes.
And what I learned down the road of working with solar panels is that the maintenance is not very cost efficient. The power saving and the batteries that come are quite expensive. Mm. And there is a lifespan for the solar panels. Nonetheless, there is also these harms, environmental harms that happen maybe towards wildlife in general and whatnot. So isn't this a problem in your perspective that, you've perhaps found a solution to where you overcame this problem or this issue?
All these concerns that you mentioned are certainly practical issues, practical concerns. One can have a concept and then you drill down, well, what is the practical reality? What does it actually do on a day-to-day basis? Mm-hmm. And I think that is a very important part of what we do at Masdar City. We can have the high-level concepts. They sound great.
Yes.
But we're learning here, well, what does that actually mean on the ground? Because we build these buildings, then we have to look after it, you have to operate it, you have to maintain it, right? We have a lot of data understanding how often you have to clean your PV panels.
Yes.
Right? Do you clean it every day or once a week or once a month? And we understand what that does to the performance of these panels and how do you clean it? Is this a brush or do you have to use precious water? Mm-hmm. These are just practical realities. And when you do all of that, it does erode on the overall equation. But at the same time, these are the practical things that one must understand, and you have to make them work or do everything you can to make it work, or you might find it doesn't work.
Yes.
And we do things where we say, well, this is not working great in Masdar City. Okay, so enough for this experiment. Maybe next building we take a different approach. As I said, we have 3 net zero energy buildings under construction. We have already learned a lot from them, and when we finish construction and people start living in them, we're going to learn a lot more, and it's beginning to point us in certain directions of where we go from here. The reason I mentioned about economic sustainability is that the 3 different buildings does 3 different very things in terms of an experiment as a pilot.
Okay.
One of them is going to be completed probably within a few weeks from now, and we call it NZ1, so Net Zero 1.
Net Zero 1.
Yes. Sounds like a test pilot. It is a test pilot, but at the same time, it's a proper building. It's fully certified. It's going through all the building permits, and we actually have a company, a biotech company, that's already signed up to it.
Okay.
Waiting for us to finish to move in. Now, this building is very, very simple. It's effectively a box.
Okay.
But
sorry to cut you off, but talk to me about the name itself. Net Zero 1.
yes,
Is it really net zero?
it is net zero.
Okay.
Well, I say it is net zero, but of course the people need to move in, and they have to use the building. We have to take data from the building. You have to measure its energy use, its cooling use, right? And only after they use it for a certain amount of time, or say for a minimum of 12 months,
Okay.
right? And we're measuring how much power is produced on the roof over the car park, the roof over the building, right? Then we look at numbers, and one has to be higher than the other for us to declare that it is net zero. So currently I would say it's designed for net zero. Currently I can tell we are on track because we are modeling,
Okay.
right? But we have to get the real live operational data before say, yes,
It is net zero.
it is net zero. Right?
Okay.
And that's fair. It's not based on some imaginary calculation.
No, it's not the imaginary calculation.
It's
Exactly.
based on actual users. And that's the way these green building rating systems are set up. They want real data, and I think that is very good ways.
But this real data, if we speak about it, these variables change.
Yes.
You know, there are certain circumstances that actually change the variables themselves.
Of course.
And, you know, I think you know that these changes in variables might, as much as possible, become challenges down the road. However, you know, we can always overcome them. But let's go a little bit back in terms of, you know, how economically viable is it to have a net zero building, a sustainable building? There is all of these, as we just mentioned earlier, maybe the whole maintenance part of the PV panels. Just this is one element of what we're speaking about, which is very costly in general. What I'm trying to say, Mr. Chris, is, let's say I'm a third world country, and I approach you as Masdar City, and I tell you, can you build us a sustainable city, a net zero city? What kind of experiences will you be able to extract from Masdar and perhaps implement over there?
The approach that any other place on this planet to develop, let's start with sustainable city, right? Because a net zero city is an extension of sustainable city. It's a sustainable city that's gone a bit further down the line in terms of performance. My response is to anyone who wants to build, let's say, their own version of Masdar City, right, would be very similar to all people. Meaning, I don't tell them these are the buildings you need to build.
No, of course.
Right? Of course not. Because these buildings are for this environment, this part of the world, this weather, this climate. If you're in a different part of the world, the architecture that will come out obviously will be very, very different. But the approach that you take to produce this building can be similar. And I think what we're learning here at Masdar City and what we are continuously sharing is a way of thinking about the design of the buildings and the methodology and the kind of people you work with. When you put a building together, right, you have to write a brief for a building. You have to describe what you want in the first place. You have to understand if it's a high performance building and you want to be sustainable, you have to understand what targets you are going for. You have to understand how much you're prepared to spend on this building, right? And then you have to build a team of people to build this building, right? Because no one builds a building by themselves. And then you have to figure out some way to bring all these things together. And that's the hardest part. How do you bring all these things together? And so the bringing all these different components together is a real hands-on live approach, because you're dealing with people, so different people with different characteristics, with different backgrounds. People often talk about collaboration, right?
And isn't this happening right now in COP28? This is something that we'll witness, all of these collaboration between countries coming together to fulfill, a specific dream of making sure that, we're doing something about climate change that is sustainable.
We all know that real life collaboration is challenging, and
Yes.
it's not easy. We understand that, but that's not an excuse to stop. One has to
keep going,
keep starting. And when I say we do our best to practice collaborative design in Masdar City, that does not mean that we've solved every issue related to collaboration. What it does mean is that we have experience with it. And with that experience, we do certain things that reacts to the moment. So now I come back to the original question of what this other country would do.
Yes.
I say you have to deal with all these aspects, right? And once you deal with all these aspects, start off the way we started, like in the Siemens building.
Yes.
The Siemens building has no renewable energy on the roof.
At all.
At all, right?
Okay.
Or it has some hot water solar panels, but if there's no PV panels on the roof.
Okay.
But it's a very highly rated green building. Green building is rated by the LEED green building rating system. It's a platinum building. Over 40% energy and water savings, right? Has very good air quality inside the building. And yet it is a very economically sustainable building, meaning that from an investment point of view, right, the return on investment is actually very, very good. And it's a live case where you can be environmentally very efficient, have high sustainability performance, and profitable at the same time, by all means.
A lot of people are not really aware about the technicalities, how profound sustainability is, how large the volume of, all of this tremendous work. What do you think of UAE's commitment towards sustainability? Whether it's from the leadership, whether it's from the private sector, whether it's from, everyone in the UAE.
I've been following the UAE's commitment on the road to net zero by 2050, right from the beginning when they first made a commitment in 2021. The first country in the MENA region to make this commitment.
Yes.
Which is fantastic, right? Over time, when I'm not only seeing what they're doing, but I am myself personally interacting with many of the people who are involved in this commitment, my single statement is that this is a real commitment. I know that in many places there are concerns that one makes a commitment and then one doesn't really understand how to achieve that commitment. And across the world, people are aggressively and working very hard to find out that real path. So on the one point is the commitment is real, and by that I mean I see huge progress in the energy transition. That's a very, very key component. And also follow up in the area that where Masdar City is working in, one of the major contributors to emission in the built environment. There is a considerable momentum going from many organizations working together, having discussion, sharing knowledge, and I can see that the knowledge and some of the things that we are discussing today is spreading very, very quickly. This is about getting the knowledge out there, sharing the best practice, and supporting the whole journey to net zero. Energy transition is about maximizing supply. Built environment is back on the demand side and to minimize the demand on the system, right? And these two will come together and we will meet.
And we're still following through.
Following through. and meet at 2050 to achieve net zero.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.